He never lost a round that mattered, never bled, never broke. In a sport built on chaos, Khabib Nurmagomedov was control incarnate. 29 wins, 0 losses, no comebacks needed, no asterisks. From the rugged mountains of Dagestan to the roar of Las Vegas arenas, he didn't fight for fame. He fought for legacy, for honor, and for his father. He didn't talk trash, didn't sell pay-per-views with antics. He sold truth, discipline, and domination. But behind the stoic exterior was a man forged in hardship, shaped by war, and driven by faith. His rise wasn't lucky. His reign wasn't flashy. It was built on something the fight game rarely sees: purpose. This is the story of a man who entered the cage like a soldier, fought like a machine, and left like a legend. This is Khabib. Before the spotlight, before the hype, before global fame, there was only Dagestan, a fractured land of mountains, mosques, and memories of war. Here, in the village of Sildi, a boy named Khabib Nurmagomedov was born on September 20th, 1988. The world he entered wasn't built on dreams. It was built on survival, respect, and faith. Khabib's father, Abdulmanap, was more than just a coach. He was a decorated military commando in the Russian Special Forces. He believed that discipline wasn't just a virtue, it was a requirement for survival. So from age 5, Khabib was wrestling wild animals in the yard, grappling with adults, lifting boulders, and learning early that pain is temporary, but honor lasts. In Dagestan, wrestling is not a sport, it's identity. School-aged boys trained 6, sometimes 8 hours a day. Every village had a sambo coach. Every young fighter aspired to leave and prove something bigger than himself. And from the start, Khabib stood out. Short, compact, low center of gravity, and, most unusually, even for his people, controlled. No unnecessary aggression, no wasted motion. By the time he was in his teens, Abdulmanap had built an iron program. Khabib's childhood friends described him as calm, reserved, and impossibly focused. When other boys went outside to laugh or play, he stayed inside to train. He didn't entertain, he prepared. But Dagestan also demanded more. In 1999 and early 2000s, the region was still recovering from war and corruption. Sometimes house bombs were real. Kidnappings were local news. Khabib saw that chaos firsthand, wrestled it, and held it at bay. So when he finally stood up at a young age against local fighters on combat sambo mats, he wasn't scared. He was ready. By 2008, Karamon, Khabib's first Russian-style ring, was filling with talent. His wrestling peers were Olympic prospects, UFC hopefuls, even federal agents. Khabib began winning youth titles: combat sambo, youth champion, European champion, navigating each fight with a level of control that looked robotic. Not because he lacked emotion, but because he had mastered it. His choice wasn't someone else's dream. He didn't fight for letters on the wall, sponsors, or dollar signs. He fought because, in Dagestan, identity and pride were tied to discipline and dominance, and Khabib was being raised to embody both. Everything important in his formation happened before he ever crossed continents. He had built his body and mind in a land that demanded unbreakable resolve, and that would soon make him unstoppable on the global stage. Khabib Nurmagomedov entered his professional MMA career like a storm no one saw coming. From 2008 to 2012, he racked up a 16-0 record, not in plush arenas, but in wrestling rooms, warehouses, stadium basements across Russia and nearby countries. No lights, no TV cameras, no champagne showers, only submission chains and bone-crushing top pressure. His early opponents were seasoned regional sambo fighters with legitimate public reputations in Russia, men with years of experience in controlled competition. He faced them all with one tool: his father's system. Khabib would close distance instantly, control posture, transition seamlessly into ground control, then break his opponent's will. Every fight looked the same. Every opponent eventually tapped or was dominated round after round. Then, in 2012, came the call no Russian fighter had yet earned. The UFC, hungry to build its brand in Russia and seeking legitimate lightweight contenders, signed Khabib. He stepped into the octagon for the first time at UFC on FX, Guillard vs. Miller in San Jose. The world barely noticed. He didn't press a sales tour. He didn't tweet trash. He didn't pose. He simply fought. Over the next 9 fights in the UFC, Khabib never wavered. Abel Trujillo, 21 takedowns. Pat Healy, infinite control, nearly no offense. Rafael dos Anjos, quiet confidence. Vaseline, ever-present foot pressure. Khabib didn't just win. He dissolved opponents mentally before physically disassembling them. Language barriers? He barely spoke English. No memorable voice, but his wrestling was a message in its own language. Weary opponents raised their hands and kept them raised. No bluff, no comeback, just inevitability. Inside the gym at AKA, among legends like Daniel Cormier, he maintained the same composure. No ego, no flash, but everyone noticed the grip and drive on the mat. DC said Khabib's ground transport made even heavyweights look light. Kane said he had stamina for days. Javier Mendez, his coach, said he was the hardest worker he had ever trained. Yet outside, the UFC machine didn't push him. He still fought main cards, but rarely co-headlined. He wasn't offered Conor-esque backing or storylines. Instead, they watched quietly as he dismantled division after division, like it was just another bullet point. The industry was building for stars and noise. Khabib didn't know noise, or need it. His rise was relentless, but not loud, and ahead lay a storm he couldn't ignore, led by the world's biggest star. By 2013, the lightweight division was hungry for a new narrative. While fans watched Conor McGregor, Diaz brothers, and media-facing fighters grow their clout, Khabib kept forging his path. He wasn't seeking drama. He was building empire. Opportunistically, the UFC booked him against Abel Trujillo at UFC 160. The fight became Khabib's signature statement: 21 takedowns, every round. He broke Trujillo's hips, will, and undefeated record. It was not just domination. It was stamping the earth. Next came veteran Pat Healy. The fight nearly changed his trajectory. A potential loss on the cards became another demonstration of territory control. Fans whispered, "He's unstoppable." Fighters avoided calling him out. Then came Rafael dos Anjos, the run that many thought would derail his ascent. A former lightweight champion with maturing strikes and control. But during fight week, RDA injured his bicep, and the fight was pushed back. When it happened at UFC on Fox 11, Khabib shredded him. Top control, jabs, takedowns until RDA quit mid-fight to return to his base and psyche. These fights were all technical demonstrations, but deeper undercurrents were building. Injuries peppered his timeline: ACL tears, neck spasms, a separated rib. Yet he never canceled. He trained around them. He fought through them. His teammates at AKA, those bigger, stronger bodies, marveled at his conditioning. Khabib rarely, he simply took land. By 2014-15, Khabib had earned a top 2 ranking, and everyone inside the UFC machine knew he deserved title consideration. Yet the spotlight continued to favor flashy matchmakers and bigger names. Then came the day everything changed. Khabib versus Al Iaquinta for the vacant lightweight title at UFC 223. The main event dropped, title strip. It became an unassuming fight between less-than-ideal contenders. No problem. If you want legacy, sometimes you take what's offered. Khabib dismantled Iaquinta with composure, pressure, grappling excellence. He didn't clamor for plaudits. He just lifted the belt. When he left the octagon, he didn't roar. He didn't pose. He walked back, belt in hand, like a man fulfilling destiny. And somewhere in Las Vegas, the world finally noticed. By 2018, Khabib Nurmagomedov was undefeated, undisputed, and still somehow underappreciated. But everything changed the moment the UFC booked the biggest fight in MMA history: Khabib versus Conor McGregor. It wasn't just a fight. It was a clash of cultures, codes, and chaos. McGregor was everything Khabib wasn't: loud, flamboyant, and worshipped by media. He had captured 2 belts, headlined pay-per-views, and transcended MMA into pop culture. Khabib had earned his spot through discipline. Conor had talked his way into it, and when their paths finally crossed, the world paid attention. The build-up was toxic. McGregor insulted Khabib's family, his religion, his country. He mocked his father. He smashed a dolly through a bus window days before UFC 223, targeting Khabib and putting fighters in the hospital. Dana White called it criminal. The media called it promotion. Khabib called it personal, but he stayed quiet, focused. No Twitter wars, no theatrics, only preparation. He faced Al Iaquinta for the vacant title instead, dominating every round. And when the McGregor fight was finally announced for UFC 229, the MMA world erupted. The fight itself wasn't close. From the first bell, Khabib smothered Conor. Takedown, control, ground, and pound. McGregor landed a few shots in round 3, but it was Khabib's fight from start to finish. In round 4, he locked in a neck crank. Conor tapped. Khabib didn't let go right away. And then, chaos. Khabib leaped over the cage, charging at McGregor's team. Brawls erupted cage-side. Security swarmed. The UFC's most-watched fight turned into a scandal, but Khabib didn't flinch. In the post-fight interview, he asked, "Why you talk about me jumping the cage, but not what he said about my religion, my father, my country?" He was fined, suspended, vilified in headlines, but in Dagestan, he was a hero. That night, Khabib didn't just defeat Conor. He exposed the fight game's hypocrisy, where showmanship was praised but honor was ignored, and he never apologized for defending his code. The McGregor saga made Khabib a global star, but it also reinforced what he already knew. Fame is a storm. Legacy is stone. To understand Khabib, you have to understand his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, a master of combat sambo, a coach of champions, and the architect of Khabib's discipline. Their bond wasn't just blood, it was everything. Abdulmanap raised his son not only to fight, but to think, to reflect, to obey a higher calling. Islam, humility, respect, these weren't side traits. They were the foundation. And inside the cage, every takedown, every transition, every decision Khabib made was touched by his father's voice. When Khabib trained at AKA in the US, Abdulmanap would still watch from Russia. He'd send feedback, adjust tactics remotely, and push his son to be better. When Abdulmanap was finally granted a visa to corner Khabib in person for the first time, it was a moment years in the making. Then came 2020. COVID swept the world. Abdulmanap contracted the virus, fell into a coma, and passed away in July. Khabib was devastated. This wasn't just a coach. This was his anchor, his example, his purpose. The loss could have broken him, but instead, it clarified him. 3 months later, Khabib stepped into the octagon at UFC 254 to face Justin Gaethje. He had a broken foot. He hadn't told the media. He hadn't complained. He just trained quietly, with grief as his only sparring partner. The fight was clinical. Gaethje, known for violent leg kicks and knockout power, was neutralized in minutes. Khabib took him down, passed his guard, and locked in a triangle choke. Gaethje tapped. The ref waved it off, and Khabib collapsed in tears. He left his gloves in the center of the octagon, and in that moment, he announced his retirement. Undefeated, untouched, and done. No rematch, no drama, just a promise to his mother. "I cannot fight without my father." 29-0. He walked away not because he had nothing left to prove, but because the man he fought for was gone. The fight game had lost a champion, but Khabib had lost his reason to keep going, and he honored that silence with dignity. When most fighters retire, they look back with regret, with what-ifs, with bruises and debts. But not Khabib. He left on his terms. No scandals, no losses, no wars with the UFC, just 29 straight victories and a resume built on dominance. Dana White tried to lure him back, offered rematches, money, title shots. Fans begged for one more fight, against GSP, against Oliveira, against the new era. But Khabib declined every time. He said what he meant. And unlike most in combat sports, he meant what he said. Instead of chasing more belts, Khabib chose to build a legacy off the mat. He launched Eagle FC, promoted young Dagestani fighters, and guided rising stars like Islam Makhachev. His goal wasn't to remain in the spotlight, it was to shine it on others. As a coach, he carried his father's lessons forward. Honor, discipline, no shortcuts, no trash talk, only work. He turned down massive offers from promoters and brands. He didn't start a podcast. He didn't chase YouTube clout. He disappeared from cameras and reappeared only when it mattered, when he had something to teach. And the MMA world took note. The UFC eventually inducted him into the Hall of Fame, calling him one of the most dominant fighters in history. But even then, Khabib didn't linger. He thanked the crowd, quoted the Quran, and stepped off the stage. Because legacy, to Khabib, isn't built with noise. It's built with example. He didn't just go 29-0, he left 29-0. In a sport that devours its heroes, Khabib Nurmagomedov walked away clean. And in doing so, he became the rarest thing in fighting, a legend with nothing left to prove. To understand Khabib Nurmagomedov's dominance, you have to break down the code behind his control. It wasn't just wrestling. It wasn't just sambo. It was a blueprint, designed, tested, perfected. His approach was simple. Close the distance, drag you to the cage, and drown you in pressure. But the execution, pure genius. At range, Khabib was deceptively patient. He'd keep his head off center, throw feints, and wait for his moment to blitz. Once in on the hips or underhooks, the magic began. Most fighters shoot takedowns and hope to finish quickly. Khabib chained takedowns, trip, lift, trip again, until the opponent was grounded. And then came phase 2, control. He'd lock one leg with his own, trap an arm, flatten his opponent out like a surgeon. It wasn't ground and pound chaos, it was calculated violence. His strikes weren't just to damage, they were to force openings. You moved, he adjusted. You paused, he punished. And it wasn't just skill, it was conditioning. Khabib trained at altitude in Dagestan. He sparred with heavyweights. His pace never slowed. Opponents who usually controlled tempo found themselves panicked after round 1. Mentally, he was a monster. Fighters like Dustin Poirier and Michael Johnson admitted it post-fight. They'd never felt pressure like that. Johnson said he felt trapped. Poirier called it helpless. Not just physical pressure, spiritual pressure. And perhaps most terrifying, Khabib didn't care about highlight reels. He didn't chase knockouts. He chased perfection. He averaged 5+ takedowns per fight, absorbed less than a single significant strike per minute, and finished 19 of his 29 wins. The result? A fighting style that wasn't built for moments. It was built for dominance. Every second was control. Every round was his. He wasn't the most athletic, not the flashiest striker, but he made greatness look simple because his system was brutal, binary, and bulletproof, and no one, not even the most explosive or creative fighters in the world, could solve it. After retirement, Khabib didn't just vanish, he evolved. From athlete to icon, from fighter to symbol. In Russia, he became a national treasure. In Dagestan, a demigod. In the Muslim world, a proud ambassador. His fame wasn't just about victories, it was about values. He refused to sell alcohol endorsements. He turned down fashion deals. He spoke openly about faith, respect, and the discipline of the Prophet Muhammad. Where most athletes built brands from excess, Khabib built his from restraint. He didn't have to shout to be heard. When he launched Eagle FC, it wasn't just to make money, it was to create opportunity. He brought Dagestani fighters out of the shadows, gave them a stage, and paid them fairly. He built gyms, funded youth programs, and became a mentor for rising athletes from across Central Asia. On social media, he didn't post cars or watches. He posted Quranic verses, training photos, and words of encouragement. His followers didn't admire his wealth, they admired his clarity. And globally, Khabib became the face of what greatness could look like without ego. Fans who never watched MMA respected him. Sports legends from football to tennis referenced his control. Business leaders pointed to his discipline. Presidents hosted him. Children dressed like him on Eid. His story had transcended sport. Even in pop culture, in memes, reels, and YouTube shorts, Khabib remained relevant without ever chasing it. His presence felt earned, not performed. In a sport notorious for short-lived fame, Khabib's longevity came not from competition, but from conviction. He proved you could be dominant and humble, aggressive and principled, violent in skill, peaceful in spirit. And that duality is what made the world listen. 29 fights, 29 wins, 0 losses, no cuts, no knockdowns, no scandal, no comeback tour, no desperate last hurrah. Khabib Nurmagomedov's story didn't just end clean, it ended complete. In the sport of MMA, perfection is supposed to be impossible. The margin for error is razor thin. One mistake, one moment, and an entire career can spiral. But Khabib never spiraled. He stayed centered, grounded, both literally and spiritually. Critics tried to poke holes. His competition wasn't as deep. He fought too safe. But those critiques fade under the numbers. 13-0 in the UFC. Wins over champions, interim title holders, future Hall of Famers. He didn't dodge anyone. The UFC dodged him. And more than the record, more than the belt, was the standard he set. He didn't beg for attention. He didn't fake drama. He didn't throw post-fight tantrums or insult family members to sell fights. He showed up, dominated, left. That was the show. And when the time came to leave forever, he walked with pride, with silence, with honor. Fighters come and go. Champions rise and fall. But legends? They're rare. Khabib is more than a fighter. He's a case study in purpose. A man who proved that it's possible to be elite without being consumed by ego, that you can lead with faith and finish with fire. His record may be broken someday. His style may be mimicked, but his essence, untouchable. Because the truth is simple. In the chaos of fighting, Khabib brought clarity, and in walking away, he became immortal.